Well, hey everyone, my name is Nathan Jones, and if you're new here, welcome. I talk about all things movies, specifically Blu-rays, and today we are continuing with our journey into the All the Haunts Be Ours box set, a compendium of folk horror from Severin Films. This is an amazing box set, and today we're covering, I think there's 9 movies, but there's 4 discs. I might be wrong on all of the amount of movies that we're talking about, but there's a lot of things to discuss today. And yeah, I just watched the next 4 discs in this set. So this is part 2 of 3, and yeah, I hope you enjoy my thoughts on this. And yeah, I just want to know before we jump into it, what are your thoughts on these films or this box set in general? Have you traversed the forest yourself? I would love to know in the comment section down below. All right, so last time we met, we talked about disc 4, which was Witchhammer and V, which is phenomenal films together. But now we're on disc 5, which are another 2 films. And disc 5 is Lake of the Dead, a Norwegian film, and Tilbury, which is an Icelandic film. But yeah, let's talk about Lake of the Dead first. So disc 5 is Lake of the Dead, and it also has an additional audio commentary with film historians Jonathan Rigby and Kevin Lyons, which I have not watched or listened to. But Lake of the Dead is a classic Norwegian film. It's from 1958. So Lake of the Dead is a Norwegian film directed by Kjær Bjerström. I hope I'm saying that correctly. It's about 6 group of friends who are going to this remote cabin. One is an author and his wife. We got a psychoanalyst, a magazine editor, and a lawyer and his wife. And the lawyer's wife, her brother owns the cabin and has invited them to come over into this remote spot. But when they get there, it's more or less deserted, and a lot of things are kind of just a little eerie about the place and the lake that's nearby as well. And so anyone who, the legend says anyone who stays in the place, in the cabin near the lake goes mad. So there's like a legend, I guess, of a man who killed his sister, who he was in love with, and also the lover alongside his sister. So that's kind of where that lake legend of Lake of the Dead come from. I really like this movie. This is a classic film from the 50s. This is the oldest film in this box set. And yeah, this movie has an amazing atmosphere. It's really scary in some parts. It has some pretty interesting dialogue. I actually really loved the twists and turns of this whole thing. It kind of reminded me to some extent of, you would see something like Le Diabolique, something like that. Just fun little twists and turns, and making this little folk horror from Norway, this tale, really interesting. There is more of this murder mystery aspect with a tinge of folk horror. So it really is more of a drama thriller than it is folk horror, but there are some really great legends that are involved with the Lake of the Dead. So really fun film, and I really enjoyed it. It's one of those like classic films. But now we're moving on to Tilbury. So Tilbury is something that I kind of reminded myself like, oh, that's how they made Cadbury eggs and Cadbury chocolate. But this is a 1987 made-for-TV film from Iceland. It's set during World War II, and it is of the English occupation of Iceland. And it is following the Tilbury, which is a Icelandic folk legend of a woman taking a human bone, wrapping it with sheep wool, and keeping it between her breasts. And it's a ritual for more butter. And this conjures up this little creature, this impish little creature called the Tilbury, and it collects butter for its mother, its host, and vomits it up. And there is a little bit of a metaphor for British occupation here during this time period, but also at the same time just really inventive and a lot of fun as well. This is a film that has an amazing makeup work. I think it's a lot of fun. It's a made-for-TV film, so you're not going to expect much of a budget here, but it is a really fun film with some really kind of scary moments. There are actually some really great camera moments. This scene in particular right here, where you just see the outline of the Tilbury right after a dance number, quite fun. It is something that is kind of out of the left field and then just goes into straight horror. So it's a little bit of a horror comedy in some parts, and there's also maybe some Nosferatu kind of worship here a little bit too, with some of the images in the work. And then the bonus features on this disc it has audio commentary with director Vidar Vikingsson and screenwriter, I'm not going to say that one. I don't know who the screenwriter, I don't know how to pronounce it in Icelandic, but moderated by film scholar Gundren Whitehead with enough Tilbury butter, anything is good. Interview with Carl August Ulfsson. A Boy from the Country. Interview with Christian Jin Franklin Magnus. I'm saying all these names incorrectly. White spot in the back of the head. The moon fades, death rides, which is actually student films from the director that he made in the past, and were actually quite fun. And based on a French tale, actually a folk horror French tale. So it's really, really interesting and an eclectic double feature right here. The very opposite ends of the films. Right? We have a film, classic Norwegian folk tale in Lake of the Dead, and in Tilbury, it's more of a TV movie, fun folk horror that has a lot of comedy bits into it as well, a lot of chocolate that is involved, and yeah, you'll know how Cadbury is made now. So disc 5, a lot of fun. Moving right along to disc 6 and disc 7 actually, because these are Australian films, and there are 4 films from Australia that came out around the same time period. One of them a little bit earlier, I want to say. But we're going to talk about disc 6, which is about The Dreaming, and Kadaicha right here. So The Dreaming is another TV movie, and it has audio commentary with director Mario Andoricchio, moderated by film historian Jared Gahan, and it also has the trailer attached to it as well. And the fun thing about this film is it came out in 1988. So 1988 is the bicentennial of Australia. And obviously Australia, if you know the history of Australia, there's a little bit of some dark history attached to colonization, especially of its indigenous people and of the folk tales that entail it as well with the Aboriginals. And it's kind of get into this dreamlike quality, obviously, in The Dreaming. So you have that notion of the dream time, which is something that the Aboriginal people utilize within their spiritual awakenings. If anyone's seen the film Walkabout, you have a slight understanding of some of these different rituals, but this is something that's very unique to Australia. So thinking of Dreamtime and also that trauma of the Aboriginal people, that's what this film kind of tries to elicit here. So the film kind of just starts off with a discovery of an Aboriginal tomb / cave from an archaeologist, and at the same time, simultaneously at the very beginning of the film, a Aboriginal woman is trying to be saved at a hospital and is the daughter of this archaeologist. And there's this curse that happens where she starts dreaming these weird dreams, and this curse is based on this tomb that they discovered and has this curse here. So this actually has some really, really great sequences, a lot of really interesting dream sequences that I really enjoyed, but the performances, because it is more of like a TV movie, was not something I necessarily loved, but it was certainly a good time. And yeah, so that's The Dreaming, which I can't say too much about it because, like I said, there are some really interesting sequences that might be the best part of this film, but overall, it's not anything too special. Now, the next film is Kadaicha, right here, which I had a lot more fun with. It has a lot more special features as well. It has audio commentary with director James Bogle, moderated by veteran film journalist Michael Helms from Fatal Visions. It has The Final Girl of Kadaicha, audio interview with actress Zoe Karides, which she is the main protagonist in this film, conducted by film historian Jarrett Gahan as well. Composing Kadaicha, audio interview with composer Peter Westheimer, conducted by film historian Jarrett Gahan, and behind the scenes of Kadaicha and a trailer. So there's actually a lot of great special features. I really enjoyed the special features of The Final Girl of Kadaicha, just seeing this actress kind of reminisce about this time period. So Kadaicha came out also in 1988, just as The Dreaming did in the bicentennial. So another Aboriginal piece that really kind of delves into the folk horror of Australia and really kind of talks about that. So this is directed by James Bogle and is the only, according to this is actually one of the worst looking films, mainly because it is from the only surviving broadcast quality video master of this film. It's mastered from that. And so it is a little bit fuzzy. It kind of reminds me of a VHS in some instance, but it actually has like really cool quality to it and is a lot of fun. So Kadaicha is really about a suburb that is on top of an Aboriginal burial ground. And so these Kadaicha stones keep popping up, and people on the street, especially young kids teenagers like high schoolers, are having dreams where they're actually running in to this man who's giving them a Kadaicha stone, and when they wake up, on their pillow is a Kadaicha stone right next to them, and so it's a little frightening, of course. I think this film kind of fits along the lines of Poltergeist, and then also just a little bit like Nightmare on Elm Street to an extent of the Dreamtime, right? It's playing with this notion. And I think this film has a lot of really fantastic and fun death scenes, but also is really looking at the collective guilt of the I guess, the colonization of the Aboriginal people and taking of the land. And you really see this with our main character, who I mentioned earlier, as with actress Zoe Carades, I don't know how to say her name, but her father is the lead developer of this property. So there's a lot of really great death scenes in this film, and it's a lot of fun, despite this visual quality is not maybe the greatest thing in the world, because it is the only surviving master. But that is disc 6, which covers the first slew of Australian films. All right, now we're moving on to disc 7, which is 2 Australian films again. Once again, there we have Celia and Allison's Birthday. Now, Celia, one of my favorite films that I have seen so far, one of the most terrifying as well. Just realizing how scary children are. So Celia right here is from 1989, and here's some special features real quick. It has Celia and me interview with director Ann Turner. From Crawfords to Celia, interview with veteran editor Ken Salos, and it also has The Rabbit in Australia, which is a documentary about the great rabbit scare that happened in Australia, trying to just eliminate all the rabbits that were in all the suburbs, and they were just trying to more or less tame the wildlife for living conditions for the people who are living there. So Celia is a very interesting film. Like I said, it's from 1989. Directed by Ann Turner. It's set during the 1950s, during this time where this rabbit scare is actually happening. And it follows this little girl. At the very beginning of the film, her grandmother passes away in a very scary way, too. She just wakes up and is very, very excited to go see her grandmother, who more or less is her best friend. And when she turns her over to wake her up, she's already dead. And it's very frightening and a little bit traumatic for her. So, with that being said, she is a girl. Celia is a girl who is a little ostracized because she doesn't really have any friends. Even her people she's hanging out with, not necessarily the best people in the world. So one thing I mentioned was the rabbit scare. This also has hits on some political things too. During the 1950s, it's also talking about the communist Red Scare that's happening over all in the world, but happening in Australia as well. And her neighbors, Celia's neighbors, the kids that she does befriend eventually, that family is from the Communist Party, or formerly in the Communist Party, which ostracizes her yet again. Her friends are not necessarily taken in by other kids, and a lot of kids are bullying each other, and that's where you're seeing a lot of this horror really take place. And so there's some societal issues coming out with that almost like double meaning for hunting the rabbits and also hunting the communists, right? So that we see that kind of quality come in this. But the interesting thing about this, the folk horror aspect of this, is about this hubia, which I hope I am saying that correctly. But this hubia story at the very, very beginning is a lot of fun, but it's also terrifying. It's this rabbit-like creature, humanoid-like, that is hopping and trying to get people who aren't following the rules correctly. And it really is just a story that is told at school to the students, to Celia and the other kids, and they just love, they eat this up. In fact, there's the hubia story is actually in this booklet right here near the end, so it's a lot of fun, but I would like to read it a little bit further, and yeah, if you haven't seen that or read that, it's really, really fun. So the hubias are definitely the folk horror aspect of this, as well as we're also seeing just, what the trauma of being around kids are. But this film is interesting because I could certainly tell that this film probably in some way or another had shaped Pan's Labyrinth, which is Del Toro's fantastical film about a little girl who is going through this really traumatic thing, and just kind of fantasy is really just kind of dipping in and out. And so with those hubias, Celia is just seeing left and right. She's seeing these weird things that she thinks are the hubias trying to take her, or take away all the things that she loves, which is very interesting. So she's going through this traumatic experience, and she's seeing these things that may or may not exist, right? It might be fiction, it might be fantasy, who knows? It might be reality, or we don't know. But like I was saying, this film is very interesting in the sense that at the very end of the film, it ends on a note that actually kind of scares me at the very least, and hits the core a little bit. And I think this is one of the more effective films in this set when it comes to really just frightening me. And I really, really enjoyed it, and I highly, highly recommend Celia. But the next film we have here is Allison's Birthday. So moving right along, we are talking about a film from 1981, and it is Allison's Birthday, the last Australian film right here. So Allison's Birthday is an interesting film. It hasn't been released since the VHS era, apparently. This is from 1981. It's directed by Ian Coghlan, and it is the first time from a 16mm CRI scan of the film. And the special features here that has it with Allison's Birthday is extended interviews from Not Quite Hollywood with producer David Haney and cast members Joanne Samuel and Belinda Giblin. The Devil Down Under, A Satanic Panic in Australia from Rosalie Norton to Allison's Birthday, which is really interesting as well because this is really talking about that late 70s, early 80s rush of satanic panic that happened. I mean, it even happened in the States, obviously, with the Parental Advisory Board and Tipper Gore and things along those lines. So it would happen later on in the 80s with the Reagan era. And this is really interesting to see this play out in Australia. So, talking about Allison's Birthday, right? So Allison, at the very, very beginning of this film, is a really iconic scene. It's really a lot of fun. It is Allison and her friends. They're about 16 years old, and they're using a Ouija board to try to talk to a spirit. And this spirit takes over one of her friends, and there's a really cool special effects involved with it too, as well, knocking over furniture, the window, and things like that. But the effects with her friend getting possessed by apparently her father, who she never met, and saying, hey, do not go to your family in 3 years on your 19th birthday because bad things are going to happen. And she didn't really know what that meant. And so we skipped 3 years later and kind of was a little bit hesitant about it. She's with her boyfriend now, and her aunt and uncle call her up and say, hey, it's your 19th birthday. You know, you should come out to the country and, hang out and, spend some time with us. And this would be a lot of fun. And she kind of is hesitant here, thinking, well, I was warned not to go somewhere on my 19th birthday, but she still somehow does get convinced in a way. And she goes there. And her aunt and uncle are definitely a little bit suspicious. And it gives it up a little bit early in the film. In my eyes, I think it could be a little bit better to be a little bit more mysterious. It's a little bit like Rosemary's Baby in that kind of sense here. It's certainly something where it's a little bit too good to be true to see this aunt and uncle act a little strange. And they even have a garden in the back that resembles Stonehenge. So you're like, why is there this weird Stonehenge in the back? And then they say, don't go back there. There's like snakes and spiders and they're going to get you. So anyway, we see this transpire, and eventually events turn out, and I'll let you watch it if you haven't seen it. But it's a lot of fun. It's really schlocky, but at the same time, really fun in that sense of what happens next. But I really enjoy this. I even love the boyfriend's car. His car is a lot of fun. But I don't enjoy. I don't know anything about cars, so but there's that. But this film, it has parts like Wicker Man, Rosemary's Baby, like I said. There's even some Picnic at Hanging Rock moments that I enjoyed, and it's just something that I really, really enjoyed and was a lot of fun. And there's some really memorable scenes from it. So Disc 7 is also really, really strong. So Celia and Allison's Birthday are highly recommended on my watch list, and I would recommend you watching. All right, next is we're going to Poland, and this is Disc 8. This is the final disc we'll talk about today, but we're going to talk about these films right here. We got Wilczyca and Lokis, a manuscript of Professor Wittembach. So Wilczyca, which I'm going to try to not say as much, it's SheWolf, and there's actually a lot of translations here. So this is a 1983 Polish film right here, and it is directed by Marek Pajstrak, I want to say, and there is an HD restoration of the original camera negative here from this film. And the special features on Wilczyca right here is Unleashing the SheWolf, interview with director Marek Pajstrak, and it is quite interesting. It's about 15 minutes or so, and just really this person kind of just reminiscing about the time making this film and really what he wanted to accomplish with this, maybe a historical piece, and kind of just understand a little bit about what this scary tale is and told. So Wilczyca is the SheWolf, right? And the SheWolf is following a liberator fighter who comes home, and his wife, who he hasn't seen in a long time, is pregnant with a child, and she's sick. She's cursing. When I say cursing, I mean like cursing people, like, like she's a witch. And there are some really weird things going on, and everyone in town is a little bit hesitant to talk and are not happy with what she was doing around town, and just really doing debaucherous things. And that's kind of what our main character kind of comes into realization when he's there. And then he gets cursed at the very beginning, as she's about to pass away and doesn't give birth. And then he realizes with the body there's a wolf paw that she was holding between her breasts, and with that right there's some kind of weird curse. And so when they bury her, they're like, okay, well, maybe we should put a stake in her heart just to keep her spirit here, because we don't know what's going to happen. So we follow our main character, this liberator, who's got really crazy hair, by the way, and we follow him to these different locales and locations as he's going through this liberation time. And so it's really interesting too. I mentioned earlier with the interview with the director, there's something he mentions in this. He had to invent an army during 1848, which is when this thing took place, because there is a lithograph that exists in this film that is really important to the folk horror element in it. And the lithograph didn't come to Poland until this time, so he had to kind of switch some dates around, which was central to the story. So this liberation army here that's happening in 1848 didn't actually happen in 1848, but happened, I think it happened in the 60s, I want to say, not too long after. So we're following him and this evil spirit that is, he made sure that it wouldn't follow anyone, but something happened that when they burned the village and desecrated some graves, that her curse was lifted and went to somebody else. And so now he is tasked to take care of this Duchess, I think Baroness, something along that line, where she looks a lot like his wife that he buried. And this wife may or may not be a she-wolf, right? Transforming into a wolf and really just scaring everyone around the town. And it's very good. But I will say that this film does meander a little bit. It's a little long-winded, and something that probably could have been cut short, maybe 20 or 30 minutes. But other than that, I think this had a really great atmosphere. I like the transformations that you didn't really see in this film, but the cinematography, the effects here, the atmosphere, there's really great architecture. It feels really grandiose and from this time period, and it also feels cold at the same time, not just in the scenery, but in the actual architecture itself. Just feels really desolate, So otherwise, Wilczyca, SheWolf, really good time. Like I said, it meanders a little bit, so maybe not the best film, but there are some really good scenes in this film. But the last one I want to talk about is Lokis, a manuscript of Professor Wittembach right here with those glasses, which really cool camera shots with those glasses. But Lokis, it came out in 1970. It doesn't feel like 1970. It feels very fresh. Also from Poland, and directed by Janusz Majewski. I probably said that incorrectly. But it is based on an 1869 Gothic novel, and it is about a pastor / ethnographer, Professor Wittembach, who is going to this remote corner of 19th century Lithuania. And in this old country, there's some really weird tales, and he's just trying to record some weird sightings, right? So he stays with his noble family. This is a count, and the legend says that the count's mother was raped by a bear, and he, the count, was the offspring of this bear. And they can't really confirm this or deny it, but there's also some really weird happenstances that are occurring around the same time that these tales are being told to the professor, and a lot of disappearances and some really strange things just happening. It's a really bizarre film. I know I mentioned this film feels like it was just made not too long ago, but it also feels very 1970 and very unique in that sense. So it's very bizarre in that, and I wouldn't expect anything less from this folk horror box set to go down that route. So it's really about a werebear, right? A shape-shifting bear. Just as we were just talking about the shape-shifting wolf and the she-wolf, we're seeing a werebear in this, and really kind of blending these historical drama piece with also a folktale piece. And it's a really good film. It's actually a lot of fun, and my favorite on this disc. So there we have it. That is part 2 of this part 3, Traversing the Forest. We're talking about the All the Haunts Be Ours box set from Severin Films. This has been a lot of fun, and I cannot wait to dive into these last 4 discs, and also the extra material. I'm going to maybe make a side video with that extra material, who knows. But this is just a film box set that just gives you so much to love and to explore, and I think this is really interesting, and I think a lot of people who are interested in these kind of things would find this to be a very great resource for them, and it's a lot of fun. But yes, tell me about your experience with the films. I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comment section down below. So don't forget to like, share, hit the notification bell, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. I'm not jonesing around.